Hello everyone, now let us discuss about Good Manufacturing Practice Guide for Active Pharmaceutical Ingredient Part 14. This comes under Q7 Quality Guideline of ICH. This is the final part of GMP for Active Pharmaceutical Ingredients API. In this session, we will be discussing the glossary, the various terms that have been described in the session. Acceptance criteria. What is acceptance criteria? The numerical limits, ranges or other suitable measures for acceptance of test result is considered as acceptance criteria. Next, what is API? API is nothing but active pharmaceutical ingredient or drug substance. Any substance or mixture of substances intended to be used in the manufacture of a drug product, and that when used in the production of a drug becomes an active ingredient of the drug product. Such substances are intended to furnish the pharmacological activity or other direct effect in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment or prevention of a disease, or to affect the structure and function of the body. That is considered as API. Coming to API starting material. What is API starting material? A raw material, intermediate or an API that is used in the production of an API and that is incorporated as a significant structural fragment into the structure of the final API. A API starting material can be a raw material, an intermediate or an API itself whenever couple of substances are used, mixture of substances are used. An API starting material can be an article of commerce, a material purchased from one or more suppliers under contract or commercial agreement, or produced in-house. API starting materials are normally defined by chemical properties and structures. Coming to batch or lot. What is batch? A specific quantity of a material produced in the process. A specific quantity of a material produced in a process or series of processes so that it is expected to be homogeneous within specified limits. In case of continuous production, a batch may correspond to a defined fraction of the production. This is important. In case of continuous production, a batch may be defined or batch may correspond to a defined fraction of the production. The batch size can be defined either by a fixed quantity or by the amount produced in a fixed time interval. Coming to batch number or lot number. A unique combination of numbers, letters and or symbols that identifies a batch or a lot and from which the production and distribution history can be determined. Coming to bioburden. What is bioburden? The level and type, that is objectionable or not. The level and type of microorganisms that can be present in the raw materials, API starting materials, intermediates or APIs are considered as bioburden. Bioburden should not be considered contamination unless the levels have been exceeded or defined objectionable. Certain level is acceptable. A bioburden should not always be considered as contamination. It can be considered as contamination when the levels have been exceeded than the accepted levels or defined objectionable organisms have been detected. Coming to calibration. The demonstration that a particular instrument or a device produces results within specified limits by comparison with those produced by a reference or traceable standard over an appropriate range of measurements is considered as calibration. Coming to computer system, a group of hardware components and associated software designed and assembled to perform a specific function or group of functions. What is computerized system? A process or operation integrated with a computer system. Certain processes can be computerized. So what is a computerized system? A process or operation that is integrated with a computer system. Coming to contamination, the undesired introduction of impurities of a chemical or microbial nature or of foreign matter into or onto a raw material, intermediate or API during production, sampling, packing or repacking, storage or transport. At any stage, the undesirable introduction of impurities is considered as contamination. Who is contract manufacturer? A manufacturer performing some aspect of manufacturing on behalf of the original manufacturer is called as contract manufacturer. What is critical? Critical describes a process step, process condition, test requirement or other relevant parameters or item that must be controlled, hence critical, that must be controlled within predetermined criteria to ensure that API meets the specification. What is cross-contamination? The contamination of a material or product with another material or product is considered as cross-contamination. Coming to deviation, departure from an approved instruction or established standard. Departure from an approved instruction or established standard is considered as deviation. What is drug product or medicinal product? The dosage form in the final intermediate packing intended for marketing is considered as the drug product. The final finished dosage form is considered as drug product. What is expiry date or expiration date? Expiration date. The date placed on the container or labels of an API designating the time during which the API is expected to remain within the established shelf life specifications if stored under defined conditions and after which it should not be used. After the expiry date, we should not use the drug product. What is impurity? Any component present in the intermediate or API that is not desired entity. Any undesired entity is considered as impurity. What is impurity profile? A description of the identified and unidentified impurities present in the API. Coming to in-process control or process control. The checks performed during the production in order to monitor and, if appropriate, to adjust the process and or to ensure that the intermediate or API conforms to its specification are considered as in-process controls. Coming to intermediate. A material produced during steps of processing of an API that undergoes further molecular change or purification before it becomes an API is considered as an intermediate. Intermediates may or may not be isolated. One important note is this guide only addresses those intermediate produced after the point that the company has defined as the point at which production of an API begins. It addresses only the impurities that are produced after a point that a company has defined as the point at which the production of API begins. It can be after isolation and purification, or it can be before isolation and purification. The company will decide the step. So hence an intermediate may or may not be isolated depending upon the process parameters that the company has taken into consideration. Coming to manufacture. All operations of receipt of materials, production, packing, repacking, labeling, relabeling, quality control, release, storage and distribution of APIs and related controls come under manufacture. What is material? A general term used to denote raw materials. They can be starting materials, reagents, solvents, process aids, intermediates, APIs and packaging and labeling materials. What is mother liquor? The residual liquid which remains after the crystallization or isolation process. A mother liquor may contain unreacted materials, intermediates, and levels of API and impurities. It may be used for further processing. It is the residual liquid which remains after the crystallization or isolation process. What is packaging material? Any material intended to product an intermediate or API during storage and transport is considered as packaging material. What is a procedure? A documented description of operations to be performed, the precautions to be taken, and the measures to be applied directly or indirectly related to the manufacture of an intermediate or API is considered as a procedure. Coming to process aids. Materials, excluding solvents, used as an aid in the manufacture of an intermediate or API that do not themselves participate in the chemical or biological reaction. For example, filter aid, activated carbon, etc. are considered as process aids. Coming to production, all operations involved in the preparation of an API from receipt of materials to processing and packaging of the materials. Coming to qualification. What is qualification? Any action of proving and documenting that equipment or ancillary systems are properly installed, work correctly, and actually lead to the expected results is considered as qualification. Qualification is a part of validation, but the individual qualification steps alone do not constitute process validation. Now coming to quality assurance, QA is nothing but the sum total of the organized arrangements made with the objective or object of ensuring that all the APIs are of the quality required for their intended use and that quality systems are maintained. What is quality control? Checking or testing that specifications are met is considered as quality control. What is a quality unit? An organizational unit independent of the production which fulfills both quality assurance and quality control responsibilities. This can be in the form of separate QA and QC units or a single individual or group depending upon the size and structure of the organization. So what is quarantine? The status of materials isolated physically or by other effective means pending a decision on their subsequent approval or rejection is considered as quarantine. Coming to raw material, a general term used to denote starting materials, reagents, solvents intended to use in the production of intermediates or APIs. Next, reference standard, primary reference standard. A substance that has been shown by an extensive set of analytical tests to be authentic material that should be of high purity. The standard can be obtained from an officially recognized source, prepared by independent synthesis, obtained from existing production material of high purity, prepared by further purification of existing production material. That is primary reference standard. What is secondary reference standard? A substance of established quality and purity as shown by comparison to a primary reference standard used as a reference standard for routine laboratory analysis. What is reprocessing? Introducing an intermediate or API, including one that does not conform to standards or specifications, back into the process and repeating a crystallization step or other appropriate chemical or physical manipulation steps. For example, distillation, filtration, chromatography, milling that are part of the established manufacturing process. Continuation of a process step after an in-process control test has shown that the step is incomplete is considered to be part of normal process, not reprocessing. Reprocessing is introducing a rejected material back into process. Simple continuation of a process step after an in-process control test has been incomplete is not considered as a part of reprocessing. What is retest date? The date when a material should be re-examined to ensure that it is still suitable for use. Coming to reworking. Subjecting an intermediate or API that does not conform to standards or specifications to one or more process steps that are different from the established manufacturing process to obtain acceptable quality of intermediate or API. For example, recrystallization with a different solid. That is reworking. In case of reworking, here we will be bringing back the rejected materials and the process steps are different from the established manufacturing process. In case of reprocessing, the processing steps are similar, but in case of reworking, the processing steps are different. Coming to signed or signature, the record of the individual who performed a particular action or review. This record can be initials, full handwritten signature, personal seal, or authenticated and secured electronic signature. What is solvent? An inorganic or organic liquid used as a vehicle for the preparation of solutions or suspensions in the manufacture of an intermediate or API is considered as a solvent. Coming to specification, a list of tests, references to analytical procedures and appropriate acceptance criteria that are numerical limits, ranges or other criteria for the test described. It establishes the set of criteria. Specification establishes the set of criteria to which a material should conform to be considered acceptable for its intended use. Conformance to specification means that the material, when tested according to the listed analytical procedure, will meet the listed acceptance criteria. That is conformance to specification. Coming to validation, a documented program that provides a high degree of assurance that a specific process, method or system will consistently produce a result meeting predetermined acceptance criteria. Coming to validation protocol, a written plan stating how validation will be conducted and defining the acceptance criteria is considered as validation protocol. For example, the protocol for a manufacturing process identifies processing equipment, critical process parameters, operating ranges, product characteristics, sampling, test data to be collected, number of validation runs to be executed, and the acceptable test results. All these things are included in the validation protocol. Coming to yield, expected yield and theoretical yield. What is expected yield? The quantity of material or the percentage of theoretical yield anticipated at any appropriate phase of the production based on previous laboratory, pilot scale or manufacturing data is considered as expected yield. This is the anticipated. Expected means anticipated. We are expecting this much yield will come. What is theoretical yield? The quantity that would be produced at any appropriate phase of production based upon the quality of the material to be used in the absence of any loss or error in actual production. Theoretical means there will not be any error or loss in the actual production. It can be considered as reference, theoretical yield. Expected yield should match with the theoretical yield in general. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for further videos on pharmaceutical sciences and other related disciplines.